Turkey now, where President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has dismissed international criticism of the ongoing purge, saying he couldn't care less. The EU and US have voiced alarm after 9 people at the Cumhuriyet paper were detained, along with 13 pro-Kurdish politicians. Well, since the failed July 15th coup, some 35,000 people have been arrested in Turkey, with tens of thousands more sacked from the judiciary, the education sector, the civil service and the military. Well, for more on the situation in Turkey, I'm pleased to welcome on set Emre Demir, the former editor of Zaman. Thank you so much for talking to us here on Middle East Matters. Now, you've wound down your publication, Zaman France, this summer. Yeah. Why was that?
Well, first of all, we were the French edition of Zaman newspaper in Turkey, which was the largest selling opposition newspaper in Turkey, and it had been seized in May by the government and then shut down after the coup attempt. So I have at least 40 friends, colleagues who are in prison right now. So the repression against the Zaman newspaper, which is linked to Gülen movement, is very obvious. And what happened to us, because we were a French newspaper, the reason we decided to shut down our edition, actually, it was related to threats against our journalists, but also our readership. So in Turkey, if you are a reader of Zaman, you are considered as a member of a terrorist organization. So it was a very highly risky move for us to continue to edit our French edition of Zaman. So we decided to stop.
For safety reasons. Now, you mentioned there this link between they're considered a terrorist movement. You've mentioned your link to the Fethullah Gülen movement. Fethullah Gülen, of course, in the States. He's blamed for this July 15th coup attempt. Is it fair to characterize the movement as a terrorist movement?
Of course not. But about the coup attempt, it is a possibility, and you have to make an investigation, a serious, transparent investigation about these allegations, because Gülen is the official scapegoat for Erdogan regime since 3 years right now. But this time, the allegation is serious. Of course, you can have Gülenist officers who played a role in the coup. We don't know yet. Actually, we don't know so much about the coup, who was the leader, who organized this coup, how did it happen. We don't know the essential information about the coup attempt. But the Gülen movement was the largest Islamic group in Turkey just 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I mean, the Gülen movement had at least 2 million members, sympathizers in Turkey. They had thousands of associations, schools, hospitals in Turkey. So the logic behind this crackdown on Gulenists is just that every single member who participated to this movement, who worked in their institutions, are members of a terrorist organization. So this is why we see these huge numbers who have been fired from the state, who are in prison. So it is actually unfair because, to put it simple, there were 2,000, at least, at most 2,000 army officers who participated in the coup, and more than 30 police officers who helped them. After all, we have more than 100,000 people who have been fired from state, and more than 30,000 people who are in prison right now because of the coup attempt. It is ludicrous and unfair, actually.
Okay, so the implication being that this was started as a spat between President Erdogan and Fethullah Gülen, who were one-time allies. It seems to have gone beyond that. It seems they're no longer targeting Gulenists. We have Kurdish politicians who are now in the firing line. Why is this, and what happens next?
Well, to be clear, what is happening in Turkey is not a crackdown on Gulenists who went too far. It's not an irrational fear, irrational crackdown. It is actually a deliberate attempt to grab absolute power in Turkey. So Erdogan has a specific political agenda. He wants to change the constitution. He wants to have his presidential system. So he targeted actually 3 specific political groups. First, it was the Gulenists, and they have been eradicated in a way, repressive fashion. After the Kurds came, and there is actually an enormous repressive measures against the Kurdish political formation, Kurdish media, and also the pro-Western secular people are the new targets in Turkey. All have they in common that they want a Turkey who is still allied to the West. So Erdogan made an alliance with the nationalist groups, with ultra-Islamist groups, and they are targeting actually all the pro-Western groups in Turkey. It's not about Gülen and his movement anymore.
Okay, thank you for that. Emre Demir, the former editor of Zaman France, thank you so much for speaking with us here on France 24. And finally,